everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. We got a lot of news on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. We got Shuhei Yoshida. Was that bad man Jim Ryan responsible for his departure at Sony? Well, he's had a few things to say about that. We'll get into that in a bit. Take-Two's share price goes up after hackers release how much GTA's making. How much are they making? We'll get into that. I'll show you. Don't worry. I got all the facts for you. I do the research, so you don't have to. And finally, Xbox. Oh, Xbox. Another day, another Xbox headline. We have Xbox reducing the price of Game Pass and stating their mission statement for the future. Of course, we always have something to say about that. So we'll get into Xbox news. And for impressions, we have a fun feature for the episode. Thank you very much to Mr. Sleepy Man by Devin Santi. He provided a review code for this episode. Mr. Sleepy Man, a 3D platformer that you need to hear about. We'll get to it at the end. And an interesting curveball. I played Leisure Suit Larry Magnum Cum Laude from 2004, the reboot, I guess you could say, of the Leisure Suit Larry franchise that has a 62 on Metacritic. Why did I play that? What did I think? Well, you'll just have to stick around to find out. Now, how's it going? I feel like, we've got... Oh, wait a minute. I haven't even done the housekeeping. Oh, my gosh. I had to tempt you, and I forgot to even advertise to you. I apologize greatly. Let's get into the housekeeping. If you're interested, you can follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at Plug In Play Pod 1. We're all over the place. You can give us a rating, a review on your favorite podcasting service, a follow even. All of these things are greatly appreciated. They make me feel like my time is worth something. And I'm not just screaming into the void of the internet. If you want to leave a comment, you can be a part of the show. I will read out your comment if I deem it worthy of conversation here on the podcast in the comment corner, my increasingly favorite part of the show. You can also send an email in at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. It's in the description if that's too long for you. And while you're down there, there's also timestamps in the description. I do it for you. It's a labor of love. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can skip right past it, or if you wanted to hear something specific, you think that would be easier to listen to on your commute to work, you can just go right to that. So there you go. That's the housekeeping. I'm sorry. I know you were upset. You were so disappointed that I that I didn't advertise to you in that way. Thank you for sticking around through the housekeeping. Now I can ask, how's it going? How's your mom? The wife and kids all right? Work going okay? Yeah? All right. Good. Yeah, I'm doing all right, too. Thanks for asking. Well, I really don't have any big updates. I like to try and include, like, other video game centric, kind of in-betweens before I get right into the comment corner, but I don't have a lot to say this week. It's kind of a slow episode in a way. There's only 3 headlines that I'm pulling from for the news this week. 2 impressions, which is pretty good, but like 3 headlines is typically pretty slow. You're typically going to have at least 4 or 5. So it's a little slow on the news the past couple of weeks. There's been just a lot of big major bomb drops, and this week, not so much. Not as much this episode. But that's okay. We're going to make the best out of it. I like making the best out of things. Always a fun time when you have to do that. So, anyways, we'll move on to what I previously stated. And it is the truth because I love you, my faithful viewer. I love ya. It's the comment corner. That's right. I choose a couple of comments or a comment or two that I think would be good conversation topics. Something that somebody left us on one of the socials. And, I think, hey, maybe they're onto something. Or maybe they're just dumb. Maybe they're just dumb as a sack of rocks. And I want to talk about that for a minute. Fortunately, I don't think either one of these people are dumb as a sack of rocks, but I have two comment corner comments that I felt, hey, maybe I'll pull one of these guys out. First off, from Instagram. Oh, you should check out the Instagram if you're feeling curious. It's Diapurius, which I'm sure is like Latin for something, but honestly, when I read it, I was just like, this guy must have like a diaper fetish or something. Not to insult a fan, one of my biggest fans. It's just some random guy that commented, but I appreciate the comment, and he'll never listen to this, but still, wasn't trying to insult anybody who wants to engage. So I did think of diapers first when reading your name, not the possible Latin interpretation, which I don't have off the top of my head. Took 3 or 2.5 years of Latin, wasn't very good at it. There's a reason. I recognize the eus, and I'm like, oh, that's Latin. That's one of the endings. I'm sure I can go through the song, but I don't. I am really trailing off. I apologize. This is a video game podcast, not a freaking Latin podcast. Gosh darn. Okay, so this is in regards to me talking about the Switch 2 underperforming. So, in response, Mr. Diperius says, even though the Switch 2 is a great price for what it is, there's plenty of people who got lied to hard, in all caps, on release. I've literally had people legitimately tell me Switch 2 copies are $100 and they're all game key cards, and they also say Switch 2 is $750 because they're basing it off of the Canadian price. A lot of misinformation going on that hurt it, in my opinion. Interesting. So this is one of those things. I love the conversation because I would have never known that. In all honesty, I never heard anybody say that. The fact that anybody, honestly, I'm not going to say you're stupid if you thought that, but I just feel like, how tuned in are you? You probably aren't following that closely, right? Because I feel like if you are truly being told, and I think somebody also replied to this guy and was like, actually, the Canadian price for the Switch 2 was 650 to 750, or 600 to 700 Canadian dollars. So a little bit different than 750. So it could have been a little bit cheaper. But the point of the matter is, it's like, if you just saw a Canadian price and was like, that's what the Switch 2 is, well, frick, I'm not buying it. And then you just turned off your computer or your phone or whatever and never engaged with any other Switch 2 news, I can believe that people would like not buy a Switch 2 because of that, right? But I feel like you have to be in weird circles to be promoting the information, at least at a large scale, to a point where it would diminish sales of the Switch 2 to a notable like reason. Like if Nintendo is sitting there like, gosh darn it, we have to make sure the messaging on the Canadian price is absolutely solid because everybody's getting confused. They're not buying it because they think it's $150 more than it is. It's like, oh well, come on, man. Like I think that's that's weird if they did. So I also don't know where they would get the idea that a Switch 2 physical copy is $100. I don't know that either. Obviously Mario Kart 8, or not Mario Kart 8, but Mario Kart World was $80. With tax, you're going to be up to 90. Maybe they're also the Canadian price was $100 on that. I'm not sure. I am an American, and so I only focus on things happening in my country and nowhere else in the world. So that is, my bad. But maybe that's what he's referring to there. What I really wanted to say here is I actually wanted to take a moment, just take a moment, and talk about game key cards. So game key cards is an interesting topic because everybody seems to hate those things. Geesh, what did they do to you? So game key cards, if you're unfamiliar, is Nintendo for the Switch 2 has no discs. It's all cartridges, which is obviously different than a disc. Discs typically can, because of Blu-ray and all sorts of other things, can hold a lot more data than a cartridge can. So what happens when you have a cartridge-based system is you can't fit a game, because if you aren't familiar with any game now, any modern game nowadays, they're all 50,000 gigs or some bullcrap. You got to really pick and choose what's on your hard drive, because a lot of games will take up a lot of space just out the gate. So a lot of games, and there's been a lot of reporting on this. A lot of games, some developers say they can't fit it on there. Some of them say it's more expensive. It cuts into margin. So there are multiple kinds of cartridges you can use. There's like an X gigabyte cartridge, and then there's one that's even bigger. And if you use the one that's bigger, obviously it's going to cost more to produce that, because there's more memory storage on the cartridge. So it's a whole ball of wax that I'm not really trying to get into. What I'm really trying to get into is the hatred behind them. So basically, when you get a Switch 2 key card, is what people are calling it, you pop in the Switch card, or the cartridge, the game, the physical version of the game, and it basically just prompts you to download the thing. So the game's not actually on the cartridge, right? This is apparently diabolical. It is causing a lot of outcry within the gaming community. They're like, well, what is the point of this physical cartridge? I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just bad consumer practice. I hate this. Here's my take, okay? I don't know why it's a problem, really. In general, 90% of the games you're going to be popping in at day one are going to have a patch. So you're already going to be prompted to download a bunch of garbage immediately, playing the vast majority of games that come out. On top of that, you have still a majority, apparently, of players playing digitally. So most gamers don't even actually care about like physical games in general. So this is just an extension of a digital game, in my personal opinion. You can make an argument saying, well, why would I buy a game keycard when I can just buy a digital copy? And I would say, no, you absolutely make a point there, for sure. I think you should just buy digital. If you don't like the idea of, well, I want a game key card, or I don't like downloading, or whatever the frick, I don't know. If you like the idea of having your game downloaded and all that good stuff, just get the freaking digital version. It's easier. It's just easier. You just download it from the store and call it a day, right? Game key card, you still have ownership of. You can still sell that to somebody else. It's not like once you put a game keycard in your console, it's locked to that console and you can never use it again. It used to be like the Spyro collection, when they remade the Spyro trilogy, that some of those games were only available through a code that you had to enter, like a redemption code that you had to redeem. And when you did that, you could no longer get that game anymore. That was locked to your account. So it made reselling the game and like actual ownership of that game freaking stupid. Like you couldn't do it anymore. With this kind of a game key card, I can still take out whatever game it is that's a game key card game, X game, and put it back in the box, and I can sell it to somebody on Facebook Marketplace for 30-40 bucks, and I still that's they can still use it. So it's ownership. So is having a game on the cartridge better? Sure. It means you don't have to download the thing when you put it in, and it means you're not completely restricted. You have to have internet connection and all that good stuff in order to play the game. I get it. There's that for sure. But for the majority of cases, I don't think people are legitimately looking at this and saying, bro, I freaking hate game key cards, because in 30 years, they're going to take this game off the servers and I'm never going to be able to play it again. I can't imagine that's what we're talking about here. I can't imagine. That just seems like people are probably freaking out about that. If you go back and you look at how many players are even utilizing backwards compatibility to play games on their consoles, like on a PlayStation 5 playing a PlayStation 4 game or a PlayStation 3 game or something like that, it's minor. It's like less than 5%, maybe less than 10 last I checked. It is a very minor section of the gaming community that gives a frick about ever going back to play old games. And to say like, oh, well, this is bad for game preservation. Yeah, but like half of the games nowadays only release digitally. You can't preserve Hollow Knight Silk Song because it's only a digital game. So like this is a better form of keeping the game than it still gives you more ability to like utilize it in terms of, consumer power than a digital copy still would. Do I think game key cards are dumb? Yeah, sure, they're dumb, but I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as people make it sound. Like people are like, I refuse to buy a game key card. I won't buy it. If it's a game key card, I refuse to buy it. It's like, okay, I mean, I don't understand that. Like that's weird to me. Because if that's the case, then you have to play the game digitally, and you're going to hit the exact same problems that you're going to hit just buying a game digitally. If a game is taken off servers in 50 years or whatever, you're not going to be able to play it if it was fully digital. So like, the frick you gonna do? It just seems like a weird thing for people to get mad about, and I don't understand it. So that's my little rant on game key cards. Did I kind of wander a little bit? Yeah, but I'm gonna move on now because we're 15 minutes into the podcast, and I feel like we still have a lot to talk about. Next up was from our TikTok page, where all the kids are at. I'm an old man, so I don't know anything about TikTok. But this is from Ashtanamara. Interesting name for sure. Interesting. But this is in regards to the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. So he was just kind of speculating, what kind of game the game would be. And I think it's an interesting topic. So he says, or maybe she. I guess I shouldn't judge. I shouldn't make assumptions. But people expecting a Final Fantasy VII remake or RE4 remake style remake are going to be very, very disappointed. Other than Metroid 2, Nintendo does not do big reimagining remakes. At worst, you'll get something like Link's Awakening or Ocarina of Time 3D, parentheses, near one-to-one recreations with updated gameplay and new graphics, and at best, you'll get something like Link Between Worlds, parentheses, stated as a remake or started as a remake before turning into a pseudo sequel. I would think that actually Link Between Worlds is like it's a direct sequel. It's not a pseudo sequel. I mean, I think I know what he means. Technically, Link Between Worlds. By the way, I love Link Between Worlds, but Link Between Worlds uses the exact same map as the original game that it's based on, Link to the Past, but it's definitely a direct sequel. So, why did I want to talk about this? Well, for one, what is the new Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake going to be? Is it just a one-to-one? Is it just a graphical update? Is it a lot of people are kicking around maybe Breath of the Wild enhancements, kind of using that modern Zelda flair to really make it something kind of special and new? Maybe. I think it is if I had to guess, maybe you'll have some of the climbing involved. Maybe that's like the furthest thing I can really see incorporated from like the new Legend of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom style games. It's like maybe you'll be able to climb some stuff, but I feel like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is such a well-respected and treasured game. You can't go messing with it that much. So I don't think we're looking at like a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 2, a pseudo sequel, as some would say. And I don't think we're looking at something that's going to be completely reinventing the wheel and adding sorts of crazy mechanics. And I don't think, I personally don't believe we're looking at something that's going to be like a 3D remake, an Ocarina of Time 3D or Mask 3D remake. I think we already have that in the 3DS version, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me to do that. I think what we're looking at is like from the reporting we're seeing, it's a big budget remake. It's a game that is likely going to be a ground up remake that is, I think, and I said this in my last video, more of a Twilight Princess spin on it. And it just makes it an interesting question because what is a remake? You know, is it when you update the graphics? Is it when you build it from the ground up? Do you have to add new content? Do you have to add modernization to mechanics? Like, what is a remake? What is a remaster? What kind of levels are there to that? It's an interesting question, and I genuinely have seen that discourse a lot, especially because I'm, kind of deep in some fantasy critic circles on the internet. And I genuinely don't think we'll ever have a very concrete answer to that question. It really is just a personal preference slash, case by case basis kind of deal. But I think we're looking at something that's like basically roll back the clock, try to make a GameCube style Legend of Zelda game again. That's kind of what I think we're looking at here for this Ocarina of Time remake. I just think you can't mess with it. I think you can't mess with it that much. The furthest thing you can do is maybe add a couple Breath of the Wild mechanics, but if you add the ability to just climb up over any wall or whatever, then you're breaking the game and how it was originally designed, and a lot of traversal that you would be kind of required to do in the original game and dungeons and stuff like that would be kind of broken. So I can't see too much being changed, and I can't see too much being left the same either, if that makes sense. So I think we're kind of looking at like Assassin's Creed just did a reveal of the new Black Flag resynced. And I think we're kind of looking at that. Like, is it different? Yeah. The game, like the combat's kind of a little bit more elevated based on what it was. You kind of do some quality of life improvements here or there. You update the graphics. It looks a lot prettier. That kind of deal. I think there's a lot more that you can do with that with Ocarina of Time, obviously, because it's a way older game and it's way more archaic in design in general. But I think that's kind of what we're looking at. But that is, that's why I chose two. They were a little bit shorter. But that is what I have to say on this comment corner. Thank you very much to everybody who leaves comments. I'm very pleased with the interaction that I get from you guys, and I really appreciate both of our commenters today, both of which, left some very nice comments, some of which educated me. So I'm very happy for that. So thank you very much. And we're moving on to the news. Only 22 minutes in. Was that enough? Is that long enough? Just 22 minutes. The news. So, only a couple stories. Really 3 stories this week. It is starting off with Shuhei Yoshida says he was fired for not listening to Jim Ryan. Darn you, Jim Ryan. You messed up everything again here. You got rid of Shuhei Yoshida. What am I doing? Who's that guy? It's some old cowboy guy. I'm somehow felt the need to impersonate there. I don't know how I wandered into that, but thank you for bearing with me. Anyway, Shuhei. Mr. Shuhei. We all know Mr. Shuhei. Mr. Shuhei was the head of PlayStation Studios for a good while. We know him for being heavily involved in the production of games like The Last of Us, Uncharted, Ghost of Tsushima. Tsushima was actually the last game that he helped out with until he was demoted to going to PlayStation Indies. So he only worked with the indie titles that PlayStation was basically asking him to work on, kind of the head of that division. And it was obviously a demotion. He eventually left the company, and it was kind of shrouded in like, what really happened here? Why would you get rid of Shuhei Yoshida? Like, he's never really done anything wrong. And Shuhei objectively, like, he's been kind of coy in a lot of the statements that he's made, but in general he's been pretty understandably kind of winking, nudging, like, yeah, this was not what I wanted. And in fact, he actually said that when he left. He said, like, this was not what I would have chosen to do. I didn't want to leave Sony. Like, I was kind of made to leave. So, very recently, in a conference in Australia, he was quoted in saying, and if you've ever seen interviews with Shuhei Yoshida, he's pretty jovial, he's pretty jokey. He often says things with kind of a comedic flair. So take this with a grain of salt. And I think it's worth noting that, by the way, because like the headline for this is, like, and we'll get into it in a second, but Shuhei Yoshida says Jim Ryan fired him for not listening to him and for him doing bizarre things or ridiculous things. And like, I think that sounds really harsh, especially if you know Shuhei Yoshida at all. He wouldn't be talking like that a lot. Like, he's like pissed off and throwing a tantrum and being like, "Yo, freaking, Jim Ryan's freaking ridiculous up there in Sony HQ. That's freaking stupid, mother effer." Like, I don't think he would do that. He's a very, very little Japanese man. He's a cute little Japanese guy. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't hurt a fly. But anyways, so he was giving a talk and he was kind of going through all of his accomplishments for first party, and he goes into this quote. He says, "But in 2019, after 11 years leading the first party development, I was fired from the role. Jim Ryan wanted to remove me from first party because I didn't listen to him. He asked me to do some ridiculous things, and I said no." Apparently, like, he kind of laughed a little bit about this statement, and the crowd kind of understood like this was a joke and kind of laughed along with it. So the headline sounds pretty inflammatory, but it is also like the first time he's directly stated that he was fired. He has said in the past, like, "Oh yeah, well, I didn't really want to leave Sony," and that isn't really saying he was fired, but it definitely reads between the lines as "I was fired." So, it's really unfortunate that he was let go. But I think the obvious question here is, like, well, one, why was he let go? And two, I think the biggest thing that really obviously we've talked about that in the past, but like, what was the ridiculous things that Shuhei Yoshida was being told to work on? Again, Shuhei he's had many interviews about this subject, and he's kind of gone around in circles around it. Not really in circles, but he's alluded to several things. So you look at some other quotes. So he's implied in previous interviews that he's likely talking about live service games as the ridiculous thing. Specifically, in a kind of funny interview after he left, he said, quote, "If I was Herman Holst, in Herman Holst's position, I probably would have tried to resist that direction," referring to, live service games. "Maybe that's one of the reasons they removed me from the first party." So we have various. I mean, obviously, you can take that with a grain of salt. That could be considered a jokey thing. Like, it may not have been something that actually happened, but we kind of look around and we see the games that Shuhei Yoshida was promoting, and we see the games that Jim Ryan was promoting, which of course were all of he was responsible for the live service push at Sony. And you can probably see that if Shuhei was saying, "I don't think we should do this," and Jim Ryan was saying, "Look, this is the way our freaking company is going, and if you don't like it, get the frick out of the way," that's probably what happened. Is Shuhei Yoshida said, "No, like, this is a bad decision." And I think, that kind of comes down to a big conversation topic that I don't think this exactly was necessarily leading into, but I think it's worth kind of touching on was the live service push for Sony a bad idea? And I think when I think about it personally, from a business perspective, absolutely not. I think you have to address the fact that the live service games in the industry are the big money makers. If you are lucky enough to have one of your games become the next Fortnite, you are rolling in it. You have revenue in perpetuity for possibly decades. You have little up cost to that past, getting it initially developed. It's basically just keeping it updated, adding new content every once in a while, making sure players stick around and continuously spend millions of dollars buying a freaking Nicki Minaj skin or whatever the frick. That kind of deal. So like, that's what Sony was really betting on. And the strategy that they chose was one that I honestly, if somebody told me I had to pursue a live service venture, I probably would have done the freaking same thing. There is no way to know what game is going to succeed and what game is going to fail.
especially in the live service space. A lot of games that are really good come out and nobody seems to care about them. And a lot of games that are really bad come out and they get improved upon over time and they can become very popular and very successful. So there's really no way to know when is a good time to be in or out on a live service game. So what do? Well, you throw 50 of them at a wall and you see what sticks. And that's what Sony did. They developed freaking 15 live service games. They threw every studio they had at making a live service game, and they said, well, all we need is one. We just make one Fortnite. We have one big baddie come out of this mess, and we're set. And then we can go back to making other games, or we can maybe focus on making another live service game, or just like prop this one up and keep moving forward with it. So I think that they did a good thing if they were going to approach that strategy. Obviously, we're now looking at this post mortem. The live service initiative clearly didn't work out. Helldivers 2 is really the only live service game that had any traction that Sony was promoting, and they didn't even have full faith in that in the first place. They didn't think that game was going to be very successful. So, looking back on it, Sony obviously bet on the wrong horses. I don't think you could really know what the right horse was. Like, I don't even think Concord, infamously, was that bad. I think it was okay. I think Concord was fine, and if you probably gave Concord enough room, it probably would have been like a good game. I think the same thing with High Guard. I think High Guard very recently, High Guard was some game that came out and I think just got unlucky. Like it really wasn't a bad game. It was a game that probably needed more time in the oven, more play testing, a little bit more tweaking here and there. But in general, the ideas and development and talent and gameplay behind High Guard were not bad. And I don't know what you would say at this point other than Sony clearly messed up and they should have just continued to do exactly what they were doing. And, now we're looking back on a generation where we had all these horrible live service games that took up Sony's time and resources and studios, and we didn't get much out of it. We have a whole generation that really doesn't feel like there's that much that Sony first party contributed to it. And that's really disappointing. And I think that, Shuhei Yoshida was proven correct post-mortem. Like, that kind of deal. He really, if I was sitting there as a businessman and I was trying to figure out how to make the most money, I would objectively be correct in saying we make another Fortnite. Because that's where the money is. That's who's making the most money. Are these live service games with low overhead cost and continuous revenue. Like, obviously. So it's really unfortunate that both of these people were put in worse positions because of this. Sony kind of got effed over because of the live service push, and Shuhei Yoshida really didn't deserve to lose his job and probably could have helped, administer a lot of great games, but was not able to because, of course, he was fired. So that makes it really hard. But it is weird to continuously get this like very slow drip of information over the drama surrounding Mr. Yoshida's departure from Sony, or forced departure, it seems. But it's just interesting to hear kind of that behind the curtain of the corporate culture, because it's especially at the executive level up top like that, it's got to be cutthroat. Those mother effers are either yes men or fighting it out, and that is a tough position to be in. So it's very interesting, seeing what is the show? What is that show that it's all about business people? And I don't know. I never watched it. I feel a fool for even segueing into that. But anyway, that's really the story. It's an interesting one. It's very drama. I love the tea. I love that kind of stuff, but that's really it. I just saw a lot of inflammatory headlines. The next two are a little bit bigger. The last one is definitely the biggest, but this one is also quite entertaining for different reasons. So in this news story, we have Take-Two share prices increase after hackers showed GTA 5 is making a lot of money. So, very recently, Take-Two was hacked by a hacker group named Shiny Hunters, who demanded many millions of dollars, several millions of dollars from Take-Two, and they would not release their data. Now, Take-Two declined this request for two reasons. One is, well, they said it didn't have any material impact. They're like, well, the data that you look, yeah, they stole our data, but like, it's not anything we give a frick about. Like, tell everybody. I don't give a frick if you tell everybody about that. And okay, so like, basically everybody just waited for the deadline to tick down to see whatever these guys got, and yeah, that was what we got. We got the sales data. they apparently hacked their sales data. And obviously the second reason why they said no is because you should not negotiate and capitulate with hackers. That is not correct. It obviously, that is something they teach you in Cybersecurity 101. And it is, obviously you don't want to encourage it, because if you engage with it, then people are just going to keep doing it because they know it works. So obviously that, and then most of the time, it's just not very ethical. You just don't want to do that. It just leaves you open to more problems in the future. So don't negotiate with terrorists. It's wrong. But anyway, what was all this info? Well, it was all sales data for how truly successful. How much money is GTA Online rolling in? Honestly, I didn't know we didn't know this. Like, I knew that we all know that GTA 5 is like one of the most successful games of all time. We know how many people buy it. We know people continuously buy it. We know the player counts are always very high. So we know this game is making money. And I would just assume that Take-Two would be very willing to be like, oh yeah, well, we're definitely making a lot of money. Let me tell you how much money we're making off of GTA 5. It's not a secret. We're freaking rolling in it, because that would make shareholders very happy. Why wouldn't you just tell people that? I don't know. Maybe I'm just silly. I don't understand business enough. But it just seems like, why wouldn't you just let that cat out of the bag? Because in this case, after this data was released, the next day of trading, it opened at the stock started at $202 and it moved up to $208. Now you may be saying, Henry, that's only a $6 increase. That's all less than like a Big Mac. That's not that much money. Well, when you factor in how many shares Take-Two has in stock, that's over a $1 billion market cap increase in one day, because people just saw how much money GTA Online was making. Now, how much money is that? Well, Rockstar specifically is making more than $1 million a day, or around $10 million weekly, from GTA Online, around $500 million annually. So, some other interesting tidbits. Obviously, that's a lot of money. Your eyes should be bulging at those numbers. That's a very, very good amount of money to be making for just honestly, I don't even think GTA Online puts out any like huge updates or anything like that. It's just, at least to my knowledge, I don't hear about it if so. So, that's just kind of them just making money for just kind of keeping the servers online, which is great for them. So, on top of that, we also learned player count numbers. So, how many people are playing and what platforms they're playing on. So, you can typically kind of tell that on Steam because of SteamDB, so you can tell how many PC players there are. But you can never tell consoles. That's still behind kind of a wall. So how many people are playing where, right? Well, turns out PlayStation 5 is by far the largest margin of users for GTA 5 Online, with almost 3.5 million weekly active users. PC is the lowest, with just under 1 million active users, around 900,000, 960,000, I think, is, if I remember the number correctly, active users weekly on PC. Xbox kind of falls in the middle. Xbox Series X and Xbox One both have about 1 million active users, just a little over that. And very interestingly is PS4 is the second most played console or platform for GTA Online with 1.8 million weekly active users. That's insane. That many people are still playing on their PlayStation 4. You know, like we all think like, oh, we need the newest PC. We have to have a PlayStation 5. You know, if you don't have the newest console, what are you doing? And how deep are we into this console generation without, you know, switching over? That just seems like you've waited so long. Why are you waiting so long? Well, because they play one game. They play one or two games and they're still coming out on PlayStation 4 and they still work there, and it's like, why do I need a PlayStation 5? And if all you're playing is, you know, freaking FIFA and GTA Online and Call of Duty or whatever, I don't even know if Call of Duty still comes out on PS4, but like I assume it does. I don't know. If you're just playing those, you know, annual titles that typically come out on PS4 or still active on PlayStation 4, why would you move over? Like, what are you really missing out on? Better graphics? I mean, a little bit, but like, if you're not a graphics whore, if you're just kind of happy with what you have, why does it matter? Like, what really are you missing? Is the game less fun because the textures don't look as crisp? Probably not. You're probably having a very similar experience. So I understand why people just kind of sit around on their PlayStation 4s and never move. And it really does. It is a testament to how this generation really has done such a bad job of enticing new people to switch over. And I think we're probably going to have a very similar problem with the PlayStation 6 or the next generation of consoles, because it's going to be diminishing returns all around. What are you really getting out of a next gen console at that point? You're getting more pretty textures, more pretty things. Well, you don't really need it. You don't need it because half the games are still working on PlayStation 4 that you care about. If you don't care about like playing the new shiny thing every day, you know. So it's an interesting situation to be sure, and it really does give a much better insight into how many people are refusing to upgrade, and how many people don't need to. They're still weekly actively active on GTA Online on their PlayStation 4. And the last little tidbit that I don't see anybody talk about, but I think it is interesting, is Red Dead Online. So obviously Rockstar is also in you know, they're the ones in charge of Red Dead Online. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is about 10 times smaller than GTA Online, which we all knew. I hear people talk about GTA all the time, but I very rarely hear people talk about Red Dead Redemption Online, which is funny because I actually used to play Red Dead Redemption Online pretty regularly with a friend back in like high school. We would go and because I thought it was so cool. You know, like what's so cool about running around a real city in GTA and shooting people with a gun? Like, I don't know. I guess I could do that right now if I felt like it. You know, like that's not that, you know, revolutionary, but I can't be a real freaking cowboy and like start a posse and go into a saloon and, you know, like that just sounds like such way more of a fantasy fulfillment kind of deal, right? There's no way I can actually live out that dream. Not that I'm dreaming of doing either one of those things. I have to emphasize that. But like, you know, it's way more grounded in GTA, right? You know, you're walking around a normal city street doing normal city things, and in Cowboyville over in Red Dead, you're doing things that you would only see in the movies, which is way cooler in my personal opinion. So I used to play Red Dead Redemption Online all the time, but didn't ever play it in two. Never got into it. Didn't have a friend at the time that really wanted to play it, but they're making about 10 times less. So instead of 10 million, they're making around, or instead of 10 million, they're making around a million. And they're making about 500K a week and 26 million dollars a year off of Red Dead Online. So not anywhere near as big as good old GTA, but it is still making a lot of money. I don't know why, but I thought it was like nobody was playing it. I was like, there's no way they're making any money off of it. Like they're maybe making $1 million, $2, $3, you know, three max, you know, enough to keep the lights on, but like there's just not enough player engagement or anything over there to really make it work out. It's like, no, That's enough to sustain them for sure. Like 26 million a year. Yeah, they're probably doing fine. Like it's nowhere near as big a moneymaker as GTA, but it is enough to be happy, I think. Just why not? Just keep the lights on, see what happens, kind of deal. But it's very funny to know that this was all due to a hacking attempt. Like I very rarely see, oh yeah, we were hacked, and it was ultimately it turned out pretty well. Like it really ended up having more positives than negatives. It's like, okay, well, that's good. Like very glad that worked out for you, that you were hacked. But it's good to hear some good news every once in a while. Well, we were hacked, but we actually our stock price ended up going up $1 billion. It's like, oh, well, good for you. Good for you. It Takes Two. It Takes Two. Oh my gosh, Take Two. Only one small word changes it to a very different context. But anyway, that is all for that story. Next and finally, we have another Xbox update. Everybody loves Xbox. Don't you? I know I do. Even though I haven't really touched my Game Pass game subscription in months, which is really not good because I'm paying for it. But Xbox Game Pass, speaking of the devil, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate reduces down to $22.99 after it was upgraded to a whopping $30 a month. But the little monkey's paw here is they're removing Call of Duty games for the first year. It'll come out later on Game Pass 1 year later. This is a very surprising change. Not the price itself. Obviously, that needed to happen. We'll get to that in a second. But the surprising thing is we're removing Call of Duty. What the heck? I mean, did we not just go through a $69 billion acquisition basically for Call of Duty? Like, let's be real. Microsoft didn't buy Activision Blizzard for World of Warcraft. Like, I know that's a great source of revenue. Everybody loves World of Warcraft, right? But they didn't buy it for that. They bought it for Call of Duty because Xbox as a brand is pretty attached to that thing. Shooter culture is a very big Xbox thing. And you bring in Call of Duty, that's the big guns, literally and figuratively. And you're going to put that on Game Pass. It's the number one selling game every year. People are going to start subscribing, right? The logic tracks. Well, why are they removing it then? Well, we have a couple of reports from Bloomberg and Circana that kind of tell us a story. And the story is that it was really nothing good came of putting Call of Duty on Game Pass. So what happened when Call of Duty was put on Game Pass? Well, the price rose because they have to justify this $69 billion acquisition that not only was it the biggest acquisition ever in gaming space of all time, but it also took them like 2 or 3 years of constant legal battles and giving up a bunch of not conquests. I can't think of the word. Sorry, it's a brain fart. But a bunch of concessions. There we go. Not conquests. A bunch of concessions to a bunch of different companies and courts. Like, oh yeah, well, we'll let Ubisoft have streaming rights over here in the UK or something like that. They had to really bend over backwards to make this go through. And they had to really fall on the sword in a lot of ways. And they did. They made it happen. And then what happens? Well, they have to justify that massive purchase, so they upgrade the price. Okay. Well, what then happens then is apparently they start losing $30 million a year that they would have made otherwise on premium Call of Duty bundles from people just playing it on Game Pass. So essentially, the way I interpret this statement, the way I'm reading it, is if you buy games, you will probably see, especially if you go on the digital stores, you will probably see, oh, well, you can buy the base game, or you can buy the premium version, and you get like 100 in-game currency and a gun skin, or you can buy the deluxe edition for $500 or some bullcrap, and you'll get the season pass, and you'll get a freaking Nicki Minaj skin. I don't know why that's my go-to example, but Nicki Minaj skin. and you'll get, I don't know, a deluxe art book or some bull crap. You'll get a bunch of nonsense that you don't really need, and it's overpriced as frick. It's not a good bundle. But they make a lot of money off of those. So when you're presented with, well, I can pay double the price for the deluxe edition, or I can pay my monthly subscription that I already have and just play Call of Duty. I think I'm just going to play Call of Duty without having to pay $120 because I'm already paying for it on Game Pass. So, no duh. So it wasn't necessarily that the player numbers on Call of Duty went down, even though last year Call of Duty did not do very well, but that's because we all know last year's Call of Duty was a horrific mess that really shouldn't have been released and was only forced to come out because it's an annual release schedule that they have to pump out a new game every year. But the first year that they had acquired Call of Duty and it was on Game Pass, that actually did pretty well. I think that was Call of Duty Black Ops 6, maybe 7. I don't know. I don't keep up with Call of Duty that much. I did play that game and it was fine. But in general, it was, not necessarily Game Pass was hurting the sales numbers, the player counts of Call of Duty, but it was hurting the way that people were spending money in Call of Duty because they no longer had to buy these premium versions or were tempted to buy these premium versions through Call of Duty, or for Call of Duty because they already had access to it, which is totally understandable. Not only that, but Circana then confirms really didn't change Game Pass numbers that much. Subscriptions kind of stayed stagnant. They did not go up anywhere near as much as Microsoft would have hoped post acquisition of Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty going on the pass. So what does that mean? It means there is no reason for Call of Duty to be on that pass anymore. Game Pass does not need Call of Duty, and so you should probably take it off and just make more money by selling it as a publisher and put it on PlayStation and PC and probably not Switch because for some reason you'll never be able to play Call of Duty on Switch and Xbox, and just take the revenue that you would have otherwise because you're going to be losing money putting it on Game Pass, which is kind of crazy because they literally did so much work and so much money was put into acquiring Call of Duty, the parent company of Call of Duty, so that they could have it on Game Pass. And now they're like, well, that was a bad move. It's like, that was a bad move? Do you hear what you're saying? You can't say that. You can't just takesy backsies buying Activision Blizzard in the biggest corporate acquisition in gaming history. Like, you can't just say that. Like, that is such a... You really need to make 100% sure that's going to work out. In all honesty, I'm kind of surprised it didn't. I guess Game Pass is more so for a hardcore gaming community that is wanting to play a lot of different games and kind of try a lot of different games. And Call of Duty's audience is kind of just tuned in to just playing Call of Duty. So they don't care about Game Pass that much. Like, they'll maybe pick up the monthly subscription to play it, but who on PlayStation is going to start playing for Game Pass to play Call of Duty? They're not. They're going to be like, well, I don't give a frick. I just only play Call of Duty anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. I'll just buy it and I'll be happy with that. So it did not really move the needle for them, which is crazy. You look at the numbers and you say that's the best-selling game every year. It's the number one selling game every year. It has a massive install base. People love Call of Duty. Of course, like, if we give them an easy access, a cheap alternative to getting into Call of Duty, surely they'll come in droves. It just is so... It's one of those things I'm like, dang, that just sucks that did not work out. Because I think Game Pass as an idea is awesome. An easy, cheap, affordable way to play a lot of video games. Bro, sign me up. I love playing a lot of video games. I love trying a lot of different video games. I love sampling a lot of different video games. I love the idea of a video game subscription. I love my PlayStation Extra. subscription. I wouldn't really recommend premium, but like I love my PlayStation Extra subscription. I love Game Pass as a concept. It has not had anything I really want to play in a while, but I really enjoy the idea overall. And the fact that it's obvious it's not working, and probably subscriptions are something that really need to be fine-tuned and figured out in order to make them work within games is kind of sad, because you see how easy it is for something like a Netflix to exist and be profitable and be this juggernaut and give everybody this massive swath of content to enjoy. In my opinion, 90% of what comes out on Netflix is trash, and not worth watching. But like the other 10%, I'm glad somebody has the ability to watch. But hopefully that may have happened to the video game industry if Game Pass had really taken over. But it ultimately was a consumer friendly idea until they raised the price to a point where it was not. So what do I think about that in general? I think this one price decrease, I like it. Obviously, I'm a Game Pass believer, and I don't really play Call of Duty. So the fact that the price went up significantly because of a game that I didn't really care about, it did not sit well with me. Like, I didn't like that. So take out that one game and you'll give me a significant discount, and a $7 discount a month. That's easily worth it for me. I don't think that's a problem. Do I still think $23 is a little too much? Yeah, it's a little too much. And do I think that Game Pass still needs more flexibility, still needs more choice? Yeah, I don't think there's enough there. I think it's odd how much is in Ultimate, but I don't want the vast majority of it. It's like there's Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft Plus and EA Plus, or whatever the frick those services are called. They're all wrapped up into Game Pass. And I'm like, look, that's great, but I don't need any of those. Like, I can buy an EA game for dirt cheap right now if I really wanted to play it. I don't need a subscription to. Same thing with Ubisoft. Those games go on sale like crazy very quickly. So I do not need a subscription to play these games that are probably $2 or $3 on a Steam sale or whatever the frick on Black Friday anyway. Same thing with Fortnite. Like, I don't need a crew subscription. I guess that's nice. Like, I do play Fortnite with a friend fairly regularly, and while that's a cool thing to have, and I've enjoyed having it. Like, if you were giving me the option of, do you want to pay more for Game Pass for this? I'd be like, no. Like, if I really just want that, I'll just buy it. Like, if I really needed a freaking Fortnite Battle Pass or whatever, the crew subscription, I would just freaking buy that. But I don't need it. I especially don't want it if it makes me pay more money for something that I already liked what it was for the price that it was. But I understand that they're also trying to make it more appealing overall. So, it's a catch-22, right? But what this really comes down to is, like, why isn't Game Pass appealing? Well, duh, it's the games. It's the games. Why have I not touched Game Pass in like 6 months? Well, it's because there's nothing on Game Pass that I want to touch. So you're thinking, oh, well, Henry, you get day one Microsoft exclusives. Isn't that just the best thing of ever? Don't you want to play day one Xbox exclusives? And I say, yes, that does sound amazing. What came out last year that makes Game Pass a compelling argument? Well, I'll tell you. You stop me when you're like, oh yeah, I loved that game. Or yeah, that was something that I needed a subscription service to try out or play that I really wanted to play. Here we go. Last year, Xbox published / released Avowed. That 81 on Metacritic that was met with lukewarm reception. Outer Worlds 2, pretty much the exact same thing, but in a sci-fi setting. South of Midnight, another mixed reception platform game from the people who made a game, like, basically have never made a good game before. Doom: The Dark Ages. You may have peaked a little bit. Your eyebrows may have raised, and you may say, Doom? Well, I like Doom. Well, for some reason, people really didn't love Doom: The Dark Ages. That was the first Doom game that I think had a real mixed, polarized reception. It was an 85, I believe, on Metacritic. But, like, overall, I didn't hear people jumping for joy over Doom: The Dark Ages. I played it for I played like the first level or two, and I bounced off of it. I was like, I really don't care about it that much. I'm not loving it, and I bounced off of it. And I met many people who said the same. So Doom: The Dark Ages was not some massive pull that they were hoping for. Tony Hawk 3 and 4 remake, which did not review as well as the first 1 and 2 remake did. And also, like, I don't know, just it seemed like that was for a specific group of people who were nostalgic for it, and it came and went. I don't remember many people talking about 3 and 4 remake very much. Obviously, Call of Duty, which you say, oh, Call of Duty. Oh, everybody loves. Oh, wait. Last year was one of the lowest reviewed Call of Duties of all time, and was considered like bad by every metric. Oh, well, that really wouldn't make that really would not move the needle on a Game Pass subscription, would it? So, okay. And then they published 2 games that went straight to Game Pass day 1. Towerborn, which you may know from the developers of Banner Saga, which, by the way, doing research for this, I did not remember Towerborn existed, nor did I know what Towerborn looked like until I had to look up gameplay of it. Like, this game, I don't think anybody knows this game exists. I've heard of the Banner Saga. I know people who like the Banner Saga. I don't know a soul who's even talked about Towerborn. That's news to me. And then Ninja Gaiden 4, which, again, I don't think set the world on fire either. I actually heard more people talking about the Ninja Gaiden 2 remake or whatever that they put out, that came out last year, like Black. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I heard more people talking about that game than I heard them talking about Ninja Gaiden 4, which is kind of crazy. So none of the games, 0 of the games that Xbox put out last year, and they put out a good number of them, people really loved. I don't think anybody was jumping for joy over any game that Xbox put out last year. So when you're paying for Ultimate, you're really paying for those day 1 access to those games that Xbox is publishing, that they're producing, they're making under their banner, and that has not panned out. Especially last year, there was nothing really of note that people wanted. So now you also have all of these games coming to other platforms. So why would, if you only want one of these games, or and you, odds are, don't want all of them, then you're probably just going to buy it on your console of choice, which is likely a PlayStation 5, and you're going to be happy, and you're just going to play that game, and you're going to move on with your life, and you're going to save $30 a month for the rest of the year, because you probably beat that game in a month and you moved on. So yeah, of course Game Pass is struggling. Of course Game Pass continues to need more content to feed the beast, and they need to strap down on their publishers, or the developers, a little bit more, and say, hey, we need games that are going to really make people go wow and say, I need to be a part of the Xbox ecosystem. Which, pretty good segue. Shortly after this, Miss Head of Xbox, Miss Asha, she came out with Matt Booty, and she put out another statement. So she put out one that got leaked, a memo that got leaked last time, that was talking about how Game Pass was too expensive. This time, it was very obviously like one that was meant to be leaked. So it was basically a statement of the future. What is Xbox moving forward? Well, I'll give you the summary here. They say the new North Star, that is their words, not mine, for Xbox will be daily active players. They also say that they will indicate, or excuse me, and indicated it will execute on new plan with 4 priorities. Thanks. Sorry, I messed that one up. But I had notes that were kind of sloppily incorporated into that sentence. Should have just left it as a quote. But they will have 4 new pillars, new priorities for the Xbox brand. That is 1, hardware, 2, content, 3, experience, and 4, services. Notably, the leadership team said that along the way, they will reevaluate their approach to exclusivity windowing, so the window of exclusivity for how long it's going to be on Xbox exclusively, and AI, and share more as we learn and decide. So they still are not firm in any plans. So that's really the highlight. They also said that they are changing their name back from Microsoft Gaming to Xbox. They're trying to basically rebrand it, trying to shift the culture, trying to really establish what is Xbox, what are we trying to do here, and that's something that every corporation really needs to kind of sit and settle on. And I'm glad they did. This is corporate 101 is you need a mission statement, you need a goal, and Xbox hasn't really had that for a long time. And I was reading an analyst's take on this not long ago, and they were saying, well, before this, what the frick was Xbox really doing? Like, what did it want? Did it want to sell consoles? Did it want to have high Game Pass numbers? Did it want to have high engagement? Like, what was the actual goal here? It really seemed like Xbox was trying to do everything. And now they've honed in and they're saying, well, we want daily active players to be the number one metric that we're really measuring success by. And when I hear that, guess what I hear? I hear multiplayer and live service games. That's right. Obviously, you can obviously say that Game Pass, getting many people in playing a lot of different games on Game Pass, even if they're single player, that could be something that they're trying to focus on in that way. But if truly their emphasis is on multiplayer and live service, or if they're trying to get daily active users, then their emphasis is going to be best succeeded by live service and multiplayer games, because as we all know, those are the games that keep people coming back regularly. So, that being said, what does this all mean? It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. This is all talk. And that's kind of what Asha's been up to this point. Technically, the Game Pass lowering is a little bit more than talk. That's an action. But the corporate speak here is, I hope this happens. I hope we get to a point that, these things are priorities. But it really feels like I won't believe it until I see it, I guess is the best way of saying it. I love everything she's saying. It sounds wonderful. It sounds like Xbox fans should be jumping for joy. Is Xbox exclusivity back on the table? I mean, I don't know how you put this genie back in the bottle, man. Like, how do you undo, how do you unwind everything that Xbox has done? And I don't think that there's a good way. There's really no way of undoing all the damage that they've done. They've pretty much become a publisher. Like, Phil Spencer transformed Xbox into Game Pass, which was essentially a publisher. They wanted Xbox Game Pass on everything, including their competitors, and made the console completely worthless. So it looks like Asha's like, well, really, Game Pass isn't working. So what's the best way to make money as a gaming brand if Game Pass isn't working? Well, you become a platform. And it's like, okay, well, that's what Sony and Nintendo and Valve all are with Steam. So it's like, okay. So you kind of suicide bombed your own freaking brand to be not that. And now you want to kind of move back in that direction is what I'm seeing. And I just can't imagine, like, a lot of these things that she's saying was also kind of double speak. It was like, we want to make the most high powered, best console out there. But also, we want to make gaming very affordable and easy to access. And it's like, well, guess what the most high-powered console is going to be? It's going to be really freaking expensive. You're going to be putting components in there that are going to make it super powerful, yeah, but it's also going to be way over the top expensive. And so those components aren't cheap. I mean, you ask any PC gamer right now, holy frick. Like, just the RAM itself is enough to put you in the freaking bank, like, in debt. You got to take out a loan to get freaking 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's freaking crazy out there. So, it's it's hard for me to be like mad at this statement. It's hard for me to be mad at Asha because it sounds like she's trying to take things back to making Xbox a competitor. But I mean, it is, again, I feel freaking bad for Phil Spencer because I love the Game Pass angle. I had faith in it. But I mean, if somebody came to me and probably told Phil Spencer, like if Phil Spencer came to me and probably said the exact same thing that he said to Satya Nadella to get him to have the green light to go all in on Game Pass, I probably would have seen the numbers and the vision to be like, yeah, you're right. Like Netflix is a really profitable thing. Why not be the Netflix of the gaming world? And that would be a really cool idea and probably a very profitable one. Let's go for it. I probably would have greenlit that too. But now that we know, oh, we did go all in on it, and we really gave it our best shot, a real college try, and it didn't work out. And it's like, well, frick, what are you gonna do? You know? Well, now Asha has the benefit of knowing, well, we tried our best on this, and it did not work. So we need to go back to what was working, which was being a competitor within the console space, is kind of what I'm reading this as. It seems like they're still kind of having their foot in all different aspects. We're still going to have Game Pass. We're still going to be producing hardware. We're still going to be, like trying to make things exclusive, but also bring them out to other consoles at the same time because we're going to have a window for it, that kind of deal. And it's very difficult to see exactly what the strategy is going to be until it's put in place. But what I'm hearing here is we're rewinding the clock a little bit on this whole Game Pass thing. We kind of recognize there's a lot that needs to be changed about it, and a lot that needs to be changed about the business and how we're approaching Game Pass and Xbox as a brand. And I like that she's having to change things. It really did seem bleak. It seemed really bleak over there at Xbox, and I appreciate her at least trying to change the messaging, anything that's going on over there. But it's still a wait and see situation for Xbox. I think great that they decreased the price on Game Pass. It's a necessary must. There's just so much left to do over there. There's so much left, and it seems like they're at least in the early stages of thinking about trying to figure it out. So that's all we got. And that is the news.
And now on to impressions. We have 2 games to talk about here. First off, we'll start with the big one. This is Mr. Sleepy Man by Devin Santi. I actually reached out to the developer, Mr. Santi himself, and he emailed me a code. I was very grateful because I've actually had my eye on Mr. Sleepy Man for a minute. This was developed entirely by Devin, and he actually used to be, prior to this, a musician before he moved into making Mr. Sleepy Man. It is a 3D platformer where you play as the titular Mr. Sleepy Man. And I saw some gameplay snippets of it, and I said, wow, this really looks like, it reminded me of like an N64 era platformer. And kind of almost like Banjo-Kazooie-esque was kind of the closest comparison that I kind of got from it. And I was like, dang, like this looks really fun. I really hope I can get in on this. And emailed him, got the key, and I said, I gots to give this a try. And I did. And it is a blast. I really enjoyed my time with Mr. Sleepy Man. Mr. Sleepy Man has a lot of things in it that I think are really good. I'm not gonna hit. Okay. Look, I got a key. Okay, I hadn't got an email directly from the developer. Okay, like yeah, my thoughts are gonna be a little skewed. All right, my opinions have been bought by a free review code key. I appreciate it, certainly. But I intend on this game, I'm not going to say did bad, but I think I hear nobody talking about it. This game did honestly fairly well in terms of what it is. I don't see a lot, unless a 3D platformer gets a massive budget, I don't see outlets reviewing it. I don't see Metacritic pages for it. I don't see people buying it and reviewing it on Steam. People did that here with Mr. Sleepy Man, but I don't think enough people talked about it. I don't think word of mouth has gotten around about this game as much as it should have, because there are some really cool moments and really fun things going on with Mr. Sleepy Man that I think that if you're a 3D platformer fan, especially for the N64 era, you're really going to appreciate Mr. Sleepy Man. So I intend on making a short to put on all the other platforms to kind of promote the game. Not because I feel obligated to because of a review code, because I genuinely want more people to play it. I think that it deserves that, especially the respect going to a singular developer. That's a massive undertaking to be not only do the game yourself, but do the music, which is a major part of this game. And I may even play a little bit of this if I'm, not afraid of getting copyright dinged or anything like that. But the soundtrack in this game is all done by Devin, and it's great. Some of the best moments in the game are centric to the game's music, and I'll get into that in a bit. But I say that all to say there are problems with Mr. Sleepy Man. I am going to blow this game because it deserves it, okay? But I am also going to talk about some of the problems that I had with it as well. I probably will not be doing that on the short, okay? So that's why if for some reason it will probably be the first short I ever make that's not like just a direct pull from the podcast. I'll write a short script for it and try to get it out there and kind of try to promote it a little bit. But here's the thing. Mr. Sleepy Man is a collectathon platformer. What makes Mr. Sleepy Man so good? Well, Mr. Sleepy Man is a Mr. Sleepy Man, and he is trying to wake up a town from a dream by ruining the dream and making everybody hate him and cause chaos. Interesting setup. But beyond that, the game really tries to allow you to explore the open area that the game gives you, and kind of experiment with how things interact with each other. You may be seeing that I'm struggling with how to proceed to talk about the game from there, because this game is fragmented, and I think that we'll probably start with what the worst part about this game is it is a fragmented game. So there are multiple sections, I would call, to Mr. Sleepy Man. There are the platforming sections, there are the main story sections, and then there are the musical sections, which aren't very many, but I think are the highlight of this game. The platforming sections are great. Mr. Sleepy Man, I will say, it is fun to move around as Mr. Sleepy Man, especially when you start unlocking, or you don't even unlock it really. You kind of figure out. I went into the tutorial of the game, the control options, and it taught me how to move around the environment and how to utilize Mr. Sleepy Man's moveset. And I realized very quickly that you can slide and you can glide, and it makes getting around really fun and really easy. And jumping around as Mr. Sleepy Man is very satisfying. And I was like, this is honestly a really well-designed 3D platforming movement system. I enjoy moving around the environment, which is great because you're going to be moving around the environment a lot as Mr. Sleepy Man, but half of the game is a 3D platformer. Very strict 3D platformer kind of deal. You're going through areas, you're collecting shiny things, and when I say shiny things, that's literally what the collectibles are, is shiny things, and you're fighting bosses, you're kind of solving puzzles within the environment, not like major puzzles like platforming puzzles. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, you don't get jigsaws or jiggies or whatever the frick from just like climbing a really tall hill or whatever and then getting to the top. You do, but that's not the only thing you get jiggies from. You get jiggies from like doing kind of like mini side quests for people, right? And you do the exact same thing for Mr. Sleepy Man. Like you do have shiny things that are like on these tough platforming challenges that you need to progress through to get the jiggies or the shiny things. And you also have these like side missions that you have to do. Like for instance, one that comes to mind off the top of my head is you have to like make a pizza for a pizza chef. You have to gather the ingredients around his restaurant and bring them to him so that he can make a pizza. And then you'll get a shiny thing. So that's your kind of basic 3D platformer stuff, right? Which is all fun. Here's the problem with that is that has nothing to do with the main story game. Like the main objective of the game, it literally has nothing to do with that. It's almost a completely separate game to do any of that. And you're like, what are you talking about? So let me get into what the main objective of the game is. So as I stated early in the game, or earlier in talking about the game has the main objective that you're kind of sent off into the ether to do with the game is to make everybody in the town hate you. Well, in order to do that, you have to find various people in the town, which is one area, one small area, and you have to find what they are doing and how to piss them off. So, for instance, there's a cashier, and you need to take their cashier, their cash register, you need to steal it, and you need to break it open with a rock. And like that is how you piss them off. So that's just one example of you think you have to do it to 5 or 6 different townsfolk in order to, completely piss off the entire town, which will then allow you to win the game or beat the game, essentially. But what that means is that there is no platforming involved in that. Like that, there's no platforming involved in that. It's completely exploration and interaction that is going to be leading you to finding out you need to steal the cash register and then break it open with a rock. Like that's you just interacting with items in the environment until something clicks, which is not like a bad thing, but it is not a 3D platformer. In fact, I would easily hearken this section of the game to being like an Untitled Goose Game type game where you are, I mean, it's a very, very apt comparison where you're just like basically trying to solve a puzzle as to how to piss somebody off, and that's pretty much it. And that's the whole thing about Mr. Sleepy Man. So you're like, okay, well, where does all the 3D platform that you were talking about come in? Well, in the main area, there's literally an offshoot that you can go that will take you to a completely separate map. And in that completely separate map, that's where you do all the traditional 3D platforming stuff. Not only that, but you have no incentive to collecting all of those shiny things. The only reason you would do it is if you want to. So there's literally no reason within the game to interact and to collect and do half of the game's honestly, I would say it's more than half of the game's content. You have no incentive to actually interact with it at all. You can beat the game and roll credits without ever collecting a single shiny thing. That is up to you. So what is this game? Like, is it a 3D platformer? I mean, it is, but it's a part of the game that you have to interact with at your own free will. And like you don't have to actually ever engage with this game as a 3D platformer. You can just play it as an Untitled Goose Game, but I don't think that's like the strong point of this game. Like you can have a fun time doing that, and I know certain gamers will enjoy that. That is not why I wanted to play this game. I wanted to play this game because I thought it was a good 3D. It looked like a good 3D platformer, and the most fun that I had playing this game is when it was a good 3D platformer. And then the third section of this game is at various points throughout the story, as you progress, there will be musical segments, which I almost hesitate to spoil because they are the coolest part about this game, but they are platforming sections that are also basically a music video. So, like, Devin, the creator of the game, who, like I said, was originally a music producer, actually has like he's live action in the game singing various songs that he's made, which some of which are very catchy. Like I ended up listening to them after I beat the game because I thought that they were actually like very fun, like punk rock kind of songs, My Chemical Romance-esque deals. And I thought they were very catchy. So I was playing that, and like all of a sudden I'm going through these music videos that are constantly changing imagery and constantly changing the way I'm platforming and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's a really cool moment in the game, and there's like 3 of them in the game. The game's not very long either. You can easily beat it in like 5-6 hours, and that was with me also engaging with a lot of the 3D platforming stuff. So I thought that those musical elements were easily the standout moments of the game. I loved them to death. I thought the 3D platforming was great, but I stopped doing it about 2/3 of the way through getting all of the shiny things because I was like, I really don't know why I'm doing this. Like, why I don't feel I got stumped on one. One of them was like a puzzle, and I was like, I really don't know what to do here, and I don't know if I need to do this. I genuinely thought I needed to collect enough shiny things in order to progress in the main story because at that point I was also stumped in what to do in the main story. I didn't know how to piss people off within the town. So like I had to turn around and go back and eventually found out, oh yeah, there's literally no reason to do that. Like you have no incentive to actually collect all those shiny things. You just need to focus on pissing the townspeople off, and that's how you get to the credits. And I was like, okay, so why why isn't this game a little bit more cohesive in its design in being a 3D platformer and an Untitled Goose Game? That's really my main problem with this game, right? And I wouldn't even say that's like a huge problem either, because if you actually just wanted an Untitled Goose Game, you can just interact with that half of the game. And if you just wanted a 3D platformer, well, you can just interact with the 3D platformer area of the game. And that's kind of what I did. I wanted to do the 3D platforming stuff, so I went off and I did the 3D platforming stuff. But it just as a guy who is looking at this from a complete objective package, I look at the design and I say, why would you create a game in which a player can choose not to interact with the vast majority of what you designed, you made? Like that just seems like such a weird decision. And I'm not saying it's a bad decision and it like hurts the game, because it doesn't. Like you can, it's just it's picking and choosing what you want to do, and a lot of games allow you to do that. But as a singular developer, that just seems like such an ordeal to go through. And it seems like a weird way to market the game as a 3D platformer when really you never have to interact with the 3D platforming elements of that game in a significant way. I mean, obviously you're running around an environment and jumping even when you're doing just the Untitled Goose Game pissing off people stuff. But like in general, you do have to do 3D platforming, but like you don't have to that much in that particular element of the game. So overall, I think the game is still very fun. I especially when I got to those music elements, my jaw dropped. I was absolutely astounded by what I was watching. It put a smile on my face. I was like, I wish the whole game was like that, because I love games that incorporate both gameplay and music in a fun way. Like the combination of those two things can lead to such an awesome experience, like a very cool experience. And like this game, the musical elements here did such a great job of that that I really wish there was more of it, but I understand that those were probably the hardest part of the game to make. So I totally understand. But overall, Mr. Sleepy Man was an incredible experience. I'm not going to say from start to end, but the parts that I really enjoyed of Mr. Sleepy Man. And the parts that I didn't enjoy, I felt like weren't bad. It was just like I don't know why they're here, kind of deal. So like overall, I think that one man designing this, you really can't complain about it. Like it's really astounding what he was able to produce, and I was very impressed. Like the more you really think of this was one guy who did this, I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed. It's a fairly large game for one man to make. It's not an easy game to make. There's a lot of design elements here that are really well done, especially the music videos. Oh my gosh. And you can tell that love was put into those too. They're easily the most love in those out of anything. And it's because, I mean, that is his music and he's the guy who made the game. So I totally get it. But I recommend Mr. Sleepy Man absolutely. Has nothing to do with the fact I received a code. It is because the game is actually Really cool. If anything I said sounded awesome to you, please check it out. Mr. Sleepy Man out now on Steam. Not on any other platform, I believe, just Steam. But still, very, very good game. Thank you, Devin, for the code. Next, and finally, we'll try to wrap it up pretty quick, is a game I don't think you were expecting me to talk about. That's Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude. Leisure Suit Larry. Have you heard of this guy? Leisure Suit Larry is, I give you a little history lesson first, I suppose, is an adventure game from Sierra, who you may know for King's Quest. Leisure Suit Larry was one of their more cult classic series and started in the late 1980s. So it's a very, very old game. Specifically, was a point and click adventure game. You probably would have understood that if you recognized Sierra at all. But Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude is not a point and click adventure game. It is the first iteration of the series that tried to be something other than a point and click adventure game. Obviously, we all know point and click adventure games kind of died. They didn't work out over time. I think that ultimately point and click adventure games just kind of proved that they weren't ever that fun. They were more so narrative games that just kind of force you to go through horrific puzzles to see good story and characters and writing. So, that's why we don't ever see those anymore. we can just play basically like a Telltale game now and get the same experience minus those horrific puzzles, which actually the original season of the Telltale Walking Dead did have those puzzle elements in it still, because it was trying to be a semi-adventure game, and then eventually they took them out. The later Telltale games have no puzzles in them at all. Like, all you're doing is just making dialogue choices and interacting with characters and talking with them. That's pretty much it, moving the story forward as well. So, and even those games don't typically, I don't feel like they've been doing very well either recently, but I still enjoy playing them every once in a while. Again, depends on the story and how well it's done. But Leisure Suit Larry, if you aren't familiar, is about a kind of loser pickup artist guy, and he's trying to get laid. Every game is about him trying to pick up women. And at the end, you typically succeed, but you have to go through a series of rejections and wacky hijinks in order to finally bag the babe. And there's like 6 Leisure Suit Larry games from the original Sierra run. And then they kind of tapered off around, I think, 1996 was the final Leisure Suit Larry game from the original creator. And then they brought it back on the Xbox with Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude, which is not a point and click adventure game, but tries to hold some of that spirit within it. There's a lot of things that you can basically you can walk around the environment and interact with things, and it Larry will make a funny joke or a quip or something like that, which is very reminiscent of adventure games in general. This is focusing on Leisure Suit Larry's nephew, who's in college, who's Larry Lapper. Or it's not Larry Lapper. Larry Lapper is uncle. I forget his name, but it's also Larry. I forget his last name. I think it's yeah, I can't remember. It escapes me. But anyways, I decided to play this game because I am nostalgic for it in a way. I saw this reviewed on XPlay on G4 TV a long time ago. In 2004, when it originally came out, I was 11 years old, to date myself. But I was very young. I was too young to play this game. Most certainly. This game has nudity. It has sex. It has drugs. It has all sorts of. It was originally an AO related rated game, which you will know is very, very rare, because normally AO games are not allowed to be put on store shelves. That was something that happened with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas a long time ago. You may be familiar with the infamous coffee mod, hot coffee mod, which was you could access by modding the game on consoles.
where you essentially could have sex with somebody in the game. And back then, we were really against interactive sex within video games. The ESRB had a hard stance against it. So if you had interactive sex in the game was immediately an AO. And so that's why they took it out of the game. But when people found out that you could still access it, San Andreas was then pulled from store shelves because it was now an AO rated game, even though you couldn't easily access that content. So it was a very big controversy. But anyway, I don't know how they got around it with Leisure Suit Larry, but they had to change some things around in order for this game to not be an AO rated game. It originally was, and they had to remove some things from the. Oh yeah, that's what they did. So I did do the research on that. So originally it was in America an AO game. Other countries it was okay, but that's because it had vagina and penis in it. You could see vagina and you can see penis. In the American version, they blurred or censor barred the penis and the vagina. So that being said, I was able to see those things, and here's why. So I played the PC version on Steam, at least I tried to. So I play on my Steam Deck. I feel like I've been fairly open about that. I don't really PC game too much, but I do play on my Steam Deck fairly regularly. It's just simpler for me, and I understand the control scheme a lot better. I don't have to relearn using the mouse and keyboard for controls and stuff like that. So I tried to play it on my Steam Deck, and the game is basically unplayable. The game has a lot of quick time events and mini games that require very quick input with your controller and buttons and all that good stuff. And the mapping on the controller essentially is impossible for me to figure out. There is no way for me to know exactly what keys map to what. And I was like, oh, well, I can just remap it. Because essentially I would go into a mini game and it'd be like, press the A button. And I would be pressing the A button and it would do nothing. And I would do that for all the face buttons did nothing. And so they were all messed up in mapping. So nobody clearly thought that anybody would play this game on with a controller. So even though this game did originally come out on consoles, so I was like, oh frig, I'll just remap it. And then I could never figure out how to get it remapped. There's no resources anywhere I could find online on how to do that effectively. So I was like, well, F me, dude. Like, I guess I'll just have to figure out another way or I'll have to put it down. I was like, wait, I'll just emulate the sucker. I'll just get the console version of the game and emulate it. And so that's what I did. I downloaded the Xbox version from Europe because I was like, I know that the American version is censored, so I'll just download the European version of this game, which is the only difference is you just get to see P and V. Like that's the only difference. So it's like, okay, cool. So I started playing it, and here are my actual thoughts. I wanted to throw that out there that it was an annoying. It was probably like an evening and a half of me just trying to figure out how to get the game to freaking work. And that's why I freaking hate PC gaming, and I don't do it is because I don't have like when I sit down to play a game, I want to freaking play a game. I do not have that much free time to just sit around and tweak with controller freaking inputs for 5 hours just to hopefully make the game work. Like not even make it work better, but just like work. So like I just want it out the box and working. That's annoying. Most PC games nowadays are okay with that. They don't have that many issues, but this is obviously a game that came out in 2004. So they didn't think that far ahead. They weren't trying to make it as accessible as humanly possible. They ported it to PC and called it a day. But anyway, so Magna Cum Laude is you're playing as Larry Lappard's nephew. You are trying to score as much puss as possible on campus, and you essentially do that by going through a series of minigames. These minigames include, basically press buttons in sequence at the right time, avoid these obstacles in a sequence, and so on and so forth. It's minigames. It's little arcadey minigames, most of which require very fast twitch button reflexes. This isn't a problem early on in the game, but like, oh my gosh, you have to do so many of these freaking things. The mini games are not fun. They are just padding to make the game a game. And more so is late in the game, they become impossible. Listen, I'm a gamer.
I am a gamer. It's the only adjective I use to describe me in a very depressing way, all right? I am a gamer. So I have the ability to press buttons really fast and have good hand-eye coordination and all that other bullcrap, at least when I'm looking at a screen. That kind of deal. It is not easy to do the mini games in this game, especially like the last third of the game. They're like impossible. It's not even doable. And to a point where the game even gives you the ability to, one, if you fail it 3 times, it will make the mini game easier. And two, if you want to at any point, you can just skip the mini game entirely. Now it costs you like a special currency that you use to buy extra stuff like bonuses, like concept art and stuff like that, and technically also like nude models of characters. But in general, it's not that big of a deal. I didn't give a frick. I just wanted to see the game, so I was like, cool. I don't give a frick. I'll use my tokens to pass these games. I freaking hate this stuff. So you're like, okay, well the gameplay sucks. Great. Why would I touch this game with a 10-foot pole? Well, one, there's boobies in it. Did I say that yet? There's boobies in it. And two, this game is actually legitimately pretty funny. Like, I actually find it to be well written and charming, and I got a lot of good chuckles out of it. Now, it is lowbrow humor. Every joke is about freaking banging people or doing drugs or being gay or something. This game came out in 2004, so there's a lot of gay jokes in here, like that kind of stuff. Like I still found a lot of the jokes to be incredibly funny. I still really did. This is also a game that was not written by the original creator. He was consulted to be a part of it, and when they so funny story, they wrote the whole game first, and then they came to him and they were like, "Hey, do you want to give your blessing to this game?" And he was like, "Well, I wrote the first 6. Like, am I gonna write this one?" And they were like, "No, we already did that for you." And he was like, "Yeah, no, I don't want my name on this." So he's technically not involved at all. But like those games are known for having comedic writing, very quippy, very funny, very kind of lowbrow humor. I thought this stuff was really funny. And again, this is freaking over a decade later. I'm playing this game over 2 decades later. 22 years later, I'm playing this game, and these jokes are still funny. It's like watching Animal House. It's basically like watching Animal House. It still works. It's still funny. I found the characters to be charming. I thought that the arcs some of these characters go on are legitimately funny. Like, okay, listen to this. So Larry is obviously meant to be like kind of a loser. Like, no woman actually wants to have sex with him. So like that's kind of the whole comedic premise for the game. So at one very early on in the game, you meet this girl, and like at the end of every course with every woman, you seduce her, but you only end up having sex. There's like 20 women you seduce in the game. You only end up having sex with like 3 of them. So minus the last 3, which you can choose which one you ultimately end up with. But like you only have sex with like maybe 3 of them. But like one of them, Larry traumatizes. He's such a loser that he traumatizes. Like he doesn't actually have sex with her. He just traumatizes her. So like most of the women that you meet throughout the game, even when you romance them, you actually don't end up with them in any way. Like at some point there's some, like at the climax of every arc with every woman, there's some comedic hijinks that happens. Like, like one of them is so promiscuous that, she wants to have like a fivesome, and like Larry's not about that. And one of them is like the daughter of a mafia boss. And so like the mafia boss like threatens to kill Larry. And like one of them you like you get blocked by like an arcade cabinet. Like a sentient arcade cabinet comes and starts like ruining your game, so like you can't like be with this chick anymore. That kind of stuff. So anyway, you don't end up with this chick, and you end up like being such a loser that she comes back as a romance option later in the game that you have to conquer, but she's gay. She's turned gay, and there's a musical number. There's a legitimate musical sequence from parodying a song from Greece about how Larry turned this chick gay. And like I thought that was hilarious. And you end up having to romance her even though she's a lesbian. And so like you end up like basically like watching her make out with her girlfriend, and like that's like Larry's like climactic moment for that particular romance, and she thinks you've turned gay, and that was the reason you were so horrible in bed with her, was because Larry was always gay. And like that, I think that's so funny. I think that's really funny. Like the way that they accomplish that is hilarious. And I think a lot of the game is very funny. Now, this game did not review well. It was very mixed. It is a 62 on Metacritic. Looking at the reviews, there's two ways that you came out on this game. And I understand both of them because comedy is subjective. The first is, and what I think is a very like reasonable take, is you thought that the game was really funny, which it seemed like most people did. Which I remember very vividly, X-Play not thinking that way back in the day. They thought the game was very offensive and not very funny. So it was like, okay, well, they didn't like that. Well, most reviewers did, looking at all the Metacritic reviews that I skimmed through. What they had a problem with was the gameplay. The gameplay sucks, and it does suck. Like, I was legitimately skipping all of the gameplay towards the end of the game. If you have to actually play this game and, like, not skip all the mini games, I genuinely feel bad for you. Like, that sounds miserable. I don't know who thought that it was a good idea to do it the way they did, but, like, take out half the mini games, try to add some puzzles in here. You know, like, I think you actually have like a really good adventure style game that would have been received a lot better. And then you have the other side, the other people who received it who hated the gameplay, and then they didn't think it was funny. So like, well, what do you get out of this game if you don't think it's funny and the gameplay also sucks? Well, it just is just a miserable experience all around. There's literally no reason for you to ever want to engage with it. So I understand why this game did not review very well. The gameplay is horrible. And if you don't think it's funny, you're going to have horrible gameplay and horrible writing. So it is what it is. I ended up really enjoying the game. I love the idea of like conquering girls in a video game. I think that's just fun. Maybe I'm just a man. Like, I don't know. But like, who doesn't love a good titty game? This is very much not as much of a titty game as you would think it is. Like I said, you only have sex with like 3 girls in this game out of like the 20 that you have to seduce. So it's very sexually charged. It's not incredibly pornographic. I absolutely would not give this game to a child though. Like that being said, you know, it's very risque. It's very perverted, but I think that that's okay as long as it's funny. And I genuinely enjoyed a lot of the characters in this game. When the game rolled credits, I was like, I fell in love with some of these characters. I'm not saying I like romantically fell in love with them. I'm like, I really enjoyed a lot of the writing and what this built up to and the journey I have been on with Larry. And that is the feeling you're going to get a lot of the times playing an old school Sierra adventure game, because you're talking with people so much and you're, you know, interacting with things so much. You get this little flavor text from the characters so often, you feel like you kind of develop this relationship with them. So I felt like that. I felt like this was a really fun time. I wish I didn't have to deal with all this horrific gameplay. But like ultimately, I really enjoyed my time with it. I was really expecting to go back to this game and be like, dang, I'm just here to see titty and to just see what I missed out on as a kid that I really wanted to try, you know, because I was probably like freaking just figuring out what girls were or whatever the frick when I first saw this game. But like, I ended up legitimately enjoying it, knowing that it was not a very well-reviewed game, and I had a very strong likelihood of not liking it. I ended up really, really falling in love with it in a way. And that was not something I expected to say about playing this game. I really expected it to be like just a porn game. You know, just be like, okay, yeah, I saw some titties and I'm good. You know, that's all I needed out of life. And nope, no, I legitimately appreciated the game's writing and humor. It was actually pretty good. So I still would not recommend the game. I think that it is way too much of a die roll, whether you're going to even think it's funny. And on top of that, the gameplay is so bad. It's like you
you really have to commit to not wanting to blow your brains out with the mini games. In all honesty, it's rough. So, especially later in the game. But in general, I enjoyed my time with the game. It was interesting. I kind of want to go back and check out other Leisure Suit Larry games if they're like that. And I have seen one or two Leisure Suit Larry games played through before. I would need a walkthrough. I do not want to deal with freaking adventure game puzzles. Oh my gosh, those things. There's a reason that genre freaking died. But I would need a walkthrough. But I would still think it would be really fun to go back and maybe look at those games again. I think they got delisted from Steam, so I don't think you can actually get them on Steam anymore. But like, still, there's a reason it was a cult classic series. It continued to go on, and I think they made another game right after this that was an abysmal flop. I don't know what was even wrong with that game, but it's a 25 on Metacritic, which I didn't even know people would come to a consensus that was that low on any game. And then they made Wet Dreams Don't Dry and Wet Dreams Don't Dry 2, which are the newest Larry Lapper games. They brought back Larry Lapper as the main character, and they were fairly well reviewed. They were like 72, 73, something like that. So a little bit more like, yeah, it's okay. But I think honestly, if you're getting a 72, 73 for like a low budget point and click adventure game, you're doing really well for yourself. So maybe I should check those games out. They genuinely might be good. I don't know. But I enjoyed my time with it. I got some laughs, and I'm genuinely glad that I got to play it. So, moving on to the next conquest, I guess, in terms of gaming. But those were my 2 games that I played over the past couple of weeks, and that will be the end of the impression segment and the end of the podcast. Well, thank you. Thank you for sticking around, friend. I really appreciate it. Always, always, always. Really means a lot to know that anybody wants to listen to me talk about this. Sorry if the impressions were a little bit rambly. Didn't have notes this time. Been a little busy. So I didn't have time. I try to make my impressions a little bit more off the cuff. I feel like they can be. Notes for news, it's a little bit more obvious. You need that because you need the facts. But impressions is all just me. It's all just what's up in my head. So hopefully you appreciate my opinions. You enjoy hearing about them, and they don't sound too crazy and annoying to listen to. But that is enough of me rambling, enough of me thanking you. I will see you on the next episode. And I hope that you have a good day, a good weekend, a good week, a good month, and play some good video games. Bye-bye!